Hand tools, the types of tools that you will start working with. There are a bunch of different clamps that you can use to hold work in place. You may also come across the word cramping. So clamping and cramping are interchangeable. No one can really say that one is correct and the other one is not. So you'll come across a lot of literature. Some of it will refer to clamps, others will refer to it as cramps. However, if using a vise or a C clamp or G clamp or some bench hooks, always ensure that your work is protected from the vice jaws, because vice jaws can leave indentations in your wood. So you can use little foam offcuts to hold your work in place, or use a little timber offcut just to make sure that your vice jaws are not damaging your work. Make sure that you measure and mark your timber. You can do so with lead pencils. Ink sometimes travels through the cells of the timber, so it can mark your timber in ways that you don't want it to. So I always like to use a workshop pencil. Use templates to minimize wastage as well. Start your model by using a blank. So a blank is just a squared off piece of timber that has usually been seasoned. Okay, so it's been dried out and it has been dressed so that all edges are square. It is essentially a block of wood that's ready for working. So you'll come across the term a blank, which means that you can purchase that and it should be ready for your work. There's many hand tools that you can use to cut through your timber. There's hand saws, which kind of look like a big triangle, okay? And it's denoted as a hand saw because it doesn't often have a back to it. And it also might have a label etched onto the side of the metal plate that tells you how long it is, as well as how many teeth are on the blade. Coping saws are really useful for intricate work. You can look up some of these saws in a minute. Then there's dovetail saws. Sometimes people will interchange the saw name and call it a tenon saw, but the dovetail saw is slightly shorter than a tenon saw. And I've included some links so that you can see different pieces of equipment. Other things that you might like to try out: chisels. Retractable blades are great for working with balsa wood because it's really easy to carve through balsa. And plane tools. Plane tools are a little harder to get used to, but I believe we have some in the workshop that you could use if you'd like to try them out. Power tools. So in the workshop we have a lot of different power tools that are useful for cutting through timber. So your drill, obviously, if you needed to put a series of holes in a particular area, we've got wood drill bits as well as metal drill bits. Just be aware that they are different. And then you've got drill bits for masonry as well. So drill bits change depending on what the material is. We've got a router table, or a table router that you can use, band saws, drop saws. We've got a thicknesser, a table saw, scroll saws. We've got miter saws, circular saws, and of course Dremel tools, that should say. However, there's a variety of electrical tools that you can use to shape your timber as needed. These are just a small list of possible machines to use. However, do not use anything if you don't have training in the use of that particular item. We can arrange training for specialist tools if you need. However, that is dependent on staff availability, technical staff availability, and your competence at using different tools in the workshop. This is, if you have a look at the back here, I've got a picture of someone working a lathe. So a lathe is a type of machine that produces cylindrical or conical shaped objects. So we call this process turning on a lathe. Turning is a subtractive process because we're getting rid of material. And there's lots of different processes that we use when we're working with wood. Machining is essentially a subtractive manufacturing process that uses a blank material. Some of the processes are listed here. So we've got dressing, which uses a planer or what's called a thicknesser. Milling uses routers. So you might use a CNC mill which cuts through metal, and there's a picture of a CNC mill just on the right there. And the other type of mill is a CNC router, and we've got a large router in the timber woodwork room which we can use as well. The image on the right is a metal mill, but just bear in mind that it can also work timber. We don't have one of these as far as I know in the workshop. However, the router that we do have is used for wood and foam, and it's on quite a large routing bed. So we can have a look at that when we go down to the workshop. Other manufacturing or machining processes are boring, so for instance using a hand drill or a drill press, turning on a lathe, and laser cutting is a subtractive process. An example of laser cutting might be kerfing, which you might like to have a look at, and it's a way of creating a flexible surface from planar material. Really interesting process with beautiful patterns that you can create to make an otherwise flat piece of ply into a curved section. And then another subtractive process is grinding and sanding, and we'll have a look at that in the finishing processes. Here are some images of the CNC router. The image on the left shows the 5 axes of the router. So it goes in direction X, Y, Z, and then it's got 2 extra dimensions A and B that can rotate work. The second image shows roughly the scale of the CNC mill that we've got in the timber woodwork room. So you'll see that there's a computer system on the left hand side, which is how we've got it set up in the workshop, and then the table or the bed on the right. And then the final image shows the 5-axis machine operating on a timber blank, producing quite a sculptural piece of artwork there. So the CNC router is actually a very powerful machine, and it gives you a lot of freedom with the types of designs that can be produced. We've used a 5-axis router in the past. If anybody has seen the little Mason Wasp scooter that was in the foyer space for quite some time, we commissioned someone to build the molds for that so that we could do a fiber composite laminate over the top and produce the monocoque design. Before I go any further, in case anybody is unsure of what CNC stands for, it really is an acronym for Computer Numeric Controlled, which means that you need some sort of CAD file to operate the router. So you'll need to speak with Trevor down in the workshop to find out exactly what kind of file type you need to export your SolidWorks files in order for our router to produce your work.